Take a breath together. So this month, we've been talking about love, and it's in the context of really caring for and healing the whole planet. And so we've been gradually building to that. We first talked about what love is from the invisible, that it is a principle that we really can't see. No one has ever actually seen love. But what we witness is love in action. We witness how love shows up in the physical form. Hello, Barbara. We witness each element of creation as an emanation of love. An emanation is best, most simply explained as the invisible in visible form. And so we are all emanations of that invisible principle of love. And so we talked about how love shows up in action. And last week we talked about falling in love with fear, because fear can be this brilliantly accurate laser informer of where we're out of alignment with the love that we are. And if we will just simply embrace its information to us and embrace the biological aspect of fear that protects us in this physical realm, that alerts us to scurry away from physical danger, to not stick our fingers in light sockets and those kinds of things. And today we're going to move it up a notch to how all of that relates to community and connection. Because before we can really connect to create community, first we got to understand what it is, that we are that informed, how it shows up, and what's the barrier that gets in our way, which we navigated the first part of the month. So, one of the things that I love most about this community is that we actually have some tools in place already as a community that give us really concrete human mechanisms to guide us in community engagement. These are things that, as obvious as they seem, not everybody knows these things. It's not, if our whole planet, if every child was raised with these guidelines to the point where they embody them as just a natural way of being, we would completely heal every ill that we experience socially in one generation. We absolutely would. And so part of it is us as a community modeling this, not just here. Here's the easy place. Sunday morning is the easy place. We all come through the door and we're very compartmentalized generally because it's only for a short period of time and we can navigate any conflict for the moment. It's what happens when we're not here in the room that really creates community. There are several different types of community. We'll just deal with both ends of the spectrum. At the far end of the spectrum over here is what's called faux community, fake community. A community where everybody acquiesces, everybody okey-dokes one another for the sake of looking good and avoiding conflict. And what happens in that type of community is there is zero connection. Zero. Because connection means delving into a certain level of authenticity. And authenticity requires, if we go back to last week, and fall in love with fear and navigate all of that mental noise that comes up, all of our opinions about ourselves, about one another, about community issues, will we dare to step into authentic, loving conversations about those things to create what's at the other end of the spectrum, which are authentic communities? And authentic communities, by definition, are messy. They're just messy. Because if everybody shows up in their authenticity, well, we're going to have disagreements. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Because how do we grow without discourse? Brother Jamal posted a thing from Utah Phyllis on Facebook that essentially addresses when we squash conflict, we kill the conversation. And we effectively disconnect. And so what would it look like if we leaned into the challenge of the conflict? What would it look like if we each stood so clearly in our own authenticity that we were willing to be vulnerable and say what we really think and feel from an open-hearted perspective, not from a position of rightness? Because if we're coming at it from a position of rightness, we're already lying that we're in a conversation. There's no conversation if I'm trying to convince you that I'm right, and there's really not a whole lot of action of love there, because in order for me to establish myself as right, I had to first establish you as wrong. And if we're all one, which is what we teach, there really is no right and wrong in the essence of our being. Now, the challenge comes in navigating human behavior, because it's a both and. The essence of all life is perfection. The essence of all life is peace. The essence of all life is love. And the activity in human form is often rarely any of those. And so how do we be with one another, hold ourselves and one another accountable to be what we actually are? Because that's really what the discourse is about. That's really what the conversation is about. It's about finding those common threads and surfacing the best of us. And sometimes we have to get into the muddy trench filled with stagnant water that really doesn't smell so good or feel so good to be in, and slog around with one another for a little while until we figure out how to help each other get out of the ditch. Right? And that is the messiness of the community. In our sacred covenant, the fifth point of our sacred covenant is so incredibly beautiful. To seek to heal upset, knowing disharmony is a call to go within. So what does that mean exactly? That means when somebody does or says something that ignites a negative feeling in me, that my first obligation is to deal with me, not to blame them. Okay? Is to understand that whatever motivated them, I don't know. And to catch myself, to stop making up a story, because we're all creative writers. Even if you think you're not, you are. Let somebody you love be late for an appointment and we instantly start creative writing, especially if we're parents. Okay? That first time that your child says they're going to the library and they don't, don't. And then you're calling all their friends, and according to all the friends, no one has seen anybody. Our creative writing mechanism goes wild. Let your spouse be late. We're very creative. I won't give you the details because I do try to maintain some level of appropriateness from the pulpit. It's often a challenge. But we were picking up trash yesterday as part of our Adopt a Highway program. And I'll just say, you find interesting things out on the side of the road. And when interesting things begin to connect, I'm like picking up trash, going, all right. And it all started with a set of divorce papers. I can share that with you. But then there were clothing items within a reasonable proximity and some other stuff. And so, I'm just like writing a whole story. Now, do I know that any of those things actually connect? No. I have no idea. They could have all been thrown out there by different people at different times, but in my mind, oh, what a story I wrote. And I amused myself, and we'll let it stay at that. Everybody who was part of the trash detail is sworn to secrecy. The point being, check yourself. Hold yourself accountable first. What story are you writing? And what's motivating you writing a story? Most of the time, it's to avoid our own inner conflict. And if we will go within first, step 1, pray. Step 2, remember step 1. After you've done that, after you've taken whatever your upheaval is to prayer for clarity, then consider the next step. We have, and 60 of both of these are printed out and over there for your taking. We have these beautiful, respectful communication guide. And I'm just going to briefly go through this. If you have a problem with me, come to me privately. If I have a problem with you, I will come to you privately. If someone has a problem with me and comes to you, send them to me. Those first 3, if we commit to those, we will eliminate gossip in this community. And we have a gossip challenge in our community. Part of my job is to tell the truth. It doesn't make us bad, it doesn't make us wrong, it makes us human. And it makes us with this amazing opportunity to put our teachings into work and into practice. To really, because before we can take what we know of community from here out there, this is our proving ground. This is our practice ground. This is our safe zone. And if we engage in a style of communication that makes it unsafe, well, we have nothing to take out there now. And spiritual community has got to be our safe space. We can make that happen simply by following these. Yeah. If someone consistently will not come to me, say, let's go to the minister together, and I'm sure he will see us about this. And that you could substitute minister for whoever they're talking about it there. Okay? Let's go talk to Dina together. Let's go talk to Red Lanny together. Whoever you put in there. Okay? Support them. Because sometimes, we don't know what people have been through in communication throughout the history of their life. And it may literally trigger something that is deeper than they even know to go talk to somebody. So let's support one another in doing that while we refuse to engage in the gossip part. Keep it moving in solution. Please do not interpret me. I would rather you ask me what I mean on matters that are unclear. Do not feel pressure to interpret my feelings or thoughts. I would rather you ask. Now that's a double-edged kind of thing, because some of us don't want to be asked. Okay? And what I have found is that most people that don't want to be asked don't know that they really do, but the way they've been asked questions in the past have been a setup. Relationships are notorious for this. To ask a leading question, which really isn't a question, it's a diving board for me to tell you what I think about you, and I bait you with a question to engage you. So we have some wounds around communication that we may or may not be aware of. Encourage people to ask. If they haven't developed the skill to ask, another way to do that is simply to say, based on your response, I believe that you've misunderstood me. Can I clarify? Invite them to have an opening. There's lots of ways to accomplish beautiful communication. And if they shut down and it creates some angst inside of you, remember rule number 1, pray. Go back to discord is a call to go within. Because we're not here to impose change on one another. We're here to invite one another into a more deeply holy conversation through authentic connection. It might take a while. Be patient with each other. Be patient with yourself. I will be careful how I interpret you, and if I am unclear, I will ask you what you meant. I will share with you that my experience has been oftentimes when I ask for clarity, it's met with irritation because there's an assumption that I'm just supposed to know because I'm the minister. I've had physicals throughout my lifetime. I've had every orifice checked. I do not have a crystal ball hiding anywhere in my physical being. So if I don't understand, I'm going to ask you for one reason only. I authentically want to know what you mean. Because understanding what you mean is important to me. Because you're important to me. So no, if the question comes from this body, it's because I really want to know who you are. If it is confidential, don't tell me. That one seems pretty simple, but it's not. How often do we say, I'm going to share this with you, but it's confidential, don't share it to anybody else, and it's something that someone shared with you in confidence. Now here's the thing, there's no way to do that without breaking their confidentiality. The only time that that would be an exception is if you're talking to your licensed practitioner or me as the minister, because needing to share that information is about protecting someone's safety and well-being. Then it's appropriate. And that's even the law for us. We can hold your confidence unless you're a danger to yourself or others. And then we have to have a different conversation for obvious reasons. Okay? So honor one another's confidentiality. If it is confidential, if you know that I may know something that's confidential, don't ask me. Don't put one another in the position to reveal confidential information. Just don't ask. Deal with Whatever angst is happening inside of you that tells you you need to know everybody else's business, that is likely not your business. Okay? Because, take a quick aside. Here's the thing about, and I just want to say I recognize this is a loaded word right up front, so if it creates some disharmony, internal disharmony, remember that's a call to go within. Drama feeds us at a really unhealthy level because it creates a sense of aliveness that mimics excitement, that mimics connection, that mimics aliveness. There are lots of ways to have those connections that are drama-free. And so check yourself. Are you delving into drama because, it's exciting and it makes me feel alive? Don't make you bad. Just gives you an opportunity for something to work on. But that's the place where we ask about stuff that's none of our business. Right? Is that we're feeding that part of us that wants to feel alive. Let's find different ways to feel alive that are healthy for us. I do not read unsigned letters and notes. If it's not important enough for you to put your name on, it's not important enough for me to give it my attention. And I encourage you to do the same thing. I do not respond to unnamed complaints, most of which begin with, I have heard from several people that. That is so obviously a gossip train, and I won't participate in that with you. And I trust that each of you will stop participating in that with one another. Please do not hint to me, hoping I will understand your need and know that you intend me, and know what you intend for me to hear. I prefer that you say exactly what you mean. Anybody who's taken a class with me has heard this. Mean what you say what you mean, and never be mean when you say it. It's very simple. But first, you have to get comfortable with your own stuff. You have to know that you are valued and that you matter and that your voice counts whether anybody agrees with you or not. Stop making your value contingent upon somebody else's agreement. You are a divine emanation of creation itself. That's your value. And it's unchangeable. It's unchangeable. So stand in that truth. Spit it out. Let's explore it. You might be holding the one piece of the puzzle that makes the whole thing clear. We don't know if you don't share. I will not hint to you, hoping that you understand. It's just a reverse of the same thing. Don't hint. Don't expect people to hint. That also ties back into the don't interpret me. If you're not sure, ask. If you're finding yourself, what they probably mean is, stop. Because when you're doing that, you're interpreting. Just ask them. Sounds to me like this is what you mean. Is that what you mean? Okay. The parking lot or hallway gossiping, griping is poisonous. It's longer than that, and you can read that. I'm going to try to short things up here. Pay attention to where you're having your conversations. It doesn't mean that we don't have things to gripe about. But are you griping in a way that it's going to damage and poison the community? Are you griping about the behavior of somebody where lots of people are going to hear that who don't necessarily need to hear it? Okay? If we truly love this community, we will engage with one another from that place of love. We will first remember that we are the presence of love. We will pay attention to how we are acting. We'll pay attention to our fears that come up. We embrace those, we tell truth to BS, and then we show up authentically for one another. And we will create a magical, magical energy that will not only draw people to us, but it is felt outside of here. Today we have a Peace and Justice March. And it is for peace and justice. It is against nothing. Against nothing. Which tells me that the essence of Mother Teresa will be with us today. Because she used to say, I'm not coming to an anti-anything march. I'm not coming to an anti-war march, but I'll come to a peace march. Our teaching is about be for something and against nothing. Here's an opportunity to demonstrate that. And in truth, every breath we take is an opportunity to demonstrate that. Pay attention to what comes up that you're against. Lean into where the common thread of love is in it. And be committed to finding it. As a social activist, that's my primary job. We say we're radically inclusive, and yet there's a lot of factions of society that are not in this room. I want to see them all in here. I am happy to have the most conservative individual in this room sitting right beside the most liberal, loving one another in the truth of their being and having the depth of conversation, because when I have done that, and I'll close with this, when we get down to the bottom, we all want the same thing. We just have different ideologies of how to get there. Now, going back to speaking our authentic truth, if we will all engage in the conversation, if we will first connect at that spirit level, let go of our opinions about one another as human beings, connect at that authentic love level, share our perspectives, we will begin to pull out the pieces of the puzzle that give us a picture that will work. But we can't create a world that works for all without being willing to navigate the conflict. And so I invite you, lean into the conflict, embrace it as a part of creation. It's like Kelly's song said, the Big Bang. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it was a little conflictual. And it created everything that in the human realm we've experienced. Childbirth, anyone who's ever done it, a little bit of conflict going on there. Okay? A little bit of conflict. I have a beautiful marriage. We navigate conflict all the time because we're two individualized expressions with different opinions and different wants and different needs and different opinions and different opinions and different opinions. Opinions are just that. Let your heart guide you. Let's take this into prayer. Recognizing there is always one, that it is perfect peace. That it must, because it is one, always be in alignment with itself. Knowing that I am that in form, knowing that all form is an emanation of this one, it follows that we must all, at the level of creation, be in perfect alignment with one another as infinitely connected through our kinship, through our individualized expression of the one as us. And so everything that is true of it must be true of us. And so I speak my word this morning, claiming, affirming, calling forth a revelation of the absolute within each expression of humanity, to recognize itself in all others, to connect with that essence beyond all of our human trappings and concerns and agendas, that we connect at the level of oneness and call that brilliance forth to lead and guide our connection, knowing that in so doing we create an authentic, beautiful community that expands and extrapolates to literally calm in every expression of the one. And as the community expands, we do create a world, a universe that works for all. Grateful to know this is how it works. Grateful to feel the simplicity of it, of this creative process, and to know the joy of leaning into that. And so it is from this place of joy, from this place of gratitude, that I release my word into that activity of love that we call law, knowing that it can only respond affirmatively, that having been spoken, it is already activated and being made manifest. So we simply move through this human experience looking for the evidence of the divine made manifest as connection, as community, as love. And I invite you to join me as we anchor this together by saying, and so it is.